right, welcome everyone to the PMM Talk series. This is the Too Long Don't Listen podcast, and I'm your host, Senda. With me today is Elliot, a PMM expert in storytelling, and I'm very happy to have him join me on this episode. How are you, Elliot?
Yeah, I'm really great. Really busy week, but busy with good things. So yeah, thanks for having me on. And yeah, it's nice to speak again after our introduction last week.
Yes, fun intro where I got to learn more about your focus on storytelling and your also new book that you wrote about storytelling. So I get to ask you a bunch of questions now that I've read some of it. So I think a great start to the conversation would be for you to give the listeners short and sweet intro about who you are and what you've been up to in the product marketing world.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Elliott Rayner from the northeast of England, and when where I'm from is a place that's really obsessed with sports, and that made me want to look at starting my career in marketing within sports. I got that by moving to a small German town named Herzogenaurach, very difficult to pronounce, even more difficult to write. But it's where Adidas and Puma, the big sports companies, are. I spent around a decade there. It was a really great place to learn about what makes a great product, and in turn, what makes a great story. Because my entire career, people had always told me that what's behind a great product is a great story. And so I spent around 10 years there, Adidas and then Asics, and then took a jump into the tech world. So it gave me a chance to really sink or swim in a new environment, use what I knew about product marketing, and had to learn a whole new skills in B2B, in tech, and the whole consistent thing that stayed true to me the whole time was this storytelling concept, this same thing that happened in physical product, the same in digital product, which is that behind every product is a great story. But when you ask people, well, what makes a great story, it's quite difficult for people to understand that. That's where I came really interested in the science of storytelling, why we are obsessed about them, why they have an effectiveness, and why it's such an effective skill for product marketers to have. And yeah, so now I work as the head of marketing for OWOW, where I put my storytelling skills to use to help build better products for teams, but also teaching storytelling as a concept to product marketers. And I know that's how we got connected. And I feel sorry that you had to read a lot of my book in a very short amount of time, but I hope you took some lessons from it at least.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, we'll talk about the book and the resources you shared in it. And I remember you told me last week that you've been spending a lot of time reading a bunch of storytelling books so that product marketers don't have to do that. So I appreciate you doing
Yeah.
heavy lifting for us. Elliot, one question I have for you to kick us off is around your background in sports and then moving to the tech industry, still in marketing as a product marketer. Did you learn anything from sport that you took away with you to the tech industry?
Yeah, I think sport is a really great example of where you can see some great examples of marketing and how the power of stories. Every World Cup, you see kind of things that stay with you. And I think it was just the connection to humans, which get a little bit lost in the tech world, especially in B2B, which I think the product marketers I work with, so many of them live in that environment and get a little bit disconnected to the idea that there's ultimately a human being making a decision at the end of all of our marketing. And they are just as responsive to storytelling as a B2C consumer buying a pair of football boots. It's much more clouded. The product's a lot more technical. The buyer's journey is different. So it's massive differences. And that was a really big learning for me of how different product marketing is from a physical B2C product and a digital B2B product. But then I think it was just a great lesson to what is the same and what's different, and also just a great opportunity to learn a whole new set of skills. So I think it's a really good thing for a product marketer it's good to be a specialist and to be, but I also encourage to try and create products in a different industry and to a different customer, and from B2C to B2B, it can be a really nice lesson into to see how you can grow as a product marketer.
And it's something you also said in the beginning, right? That to be a great product marketer, you need to nail storytelling, whether it's B2B or B2C. Is there anything that you can share with us from learning more about how storytelling works and how it benefits product marketers? Um, I guess one thing I'd love to hear from you is, what do you think product marketers can do today to get better at storytelling? Because just to share my point of view with you, I always thought that good storytellers had it in them, that it's not
Yeah.
necessarily a skill you can gain. And I think this is a bit of a misconception we have. But after reading your book, it's clearly something you can learn, and there's resources to help you do that practically. So yeah, in a nutshell, how would you encourage product marketers to get into it and become better storytellers?
Yeah, I think there's a few different routes to that, and it all depends on what type of person you are. So one way is, look, it's the frameworks. One thing I've learned about product marketers is we love a framework. Whenever I'm speaking at a conference and I've got a framework or a template on the screen and the cameras go up, and we want to see, just show me how to do it. We're very kind of like those logical type of people. And I think most people aren't aware that storytelling has these kind of frameworks that you can use. They think of storytelling as creative blank page, building a Super Bowl commercial, rather than looking at it as a beginning, middle, and end. And once you know these components of what a story needs to progress, then it's a really nice place to start. So I think that's one way. But for other people, it could be just the understanding of getting closer to your audience. I think most people don't realize that. And it's one of the illusions I have to take away right away when I begin my workshops, is that you're already a storyteller. Every time you speak to one of your family after a long time, every time you're pitching for a promotion, you're doing it usually in the form of a story. You're using the same things at a storytelling house. You're just doing it subconsciously. So it's not that you have to learn something new. It's that you have to recognize what you're already doing subconsciously and just make it conscious and amplify it. And a great way to do that is just to do what product marketers do best, is understand our audience. And because once we understand that, it's common sense that you always shape your messaging to your audience. And so you always shape your story to your audience. One story for you might be different for me. And I think that's another great entry point into it. But I think there's so many great books and resources. But another great place to start is look at your own stories that you've created. Which ones worked and which ones didn't? And really have a think about why. And I think that's one of my favorite things that I got from starting learning about the science of it, is that it does drive people crazy of, why did that post work really well? Why did that campaign succeed? Why did that product fail? And if you don't understand the components of storytelling, you can't really hold your stories accountable to say, I understand what went wrong. I understand what was missing. So I think that there's a few different ways you can do it. But for me, what makes me happy is that it's not too hard to convince product marketers to invest in storytelling anymore. It used to be a little bit more difficult, but I think now people are starting to realize that this is not a something you're born with and you lean into it or away from it. It's just like everything else. The more time I put into it, the better I'm going to get at it. And I think that's a great way to approach it.
I like that. It reminds me also of the concept of creativity. Some people argue that you're either creative or you're not. Others argue that you can learn how to be creative, and I think it
Right.
aligns a bit with storytelling. Another component you mentioned, understanding your audience. So there's definitely a psychological aspect to it, right? And even in your book, you do mention the different chemicals that are triggered in your audience, and what you can play with as well. Do you want to share some examples of how that works out, or how the psychology component comes with storytelling?
Sure. Yeah, it gets into a really interesting space, because I think we underestimate how we make decisions. So a good example of this is that it's been proven that 95% of our decisions are actually subconscious. So we think, every time when you spend a lot of time deciding what you want to put in your Amazon shopping basket and what you want, but actually you usually make that decision very instinctual, and the rest of the time you're adding more information, but very rarely does it affect that instinctual decision that you've already made. I always give the example of even something big like a house. How many people have walked into an apartment or a house and just said, it just feels right. It really feels like home. And it's such a massive decision, but we really base so many of our decisions on those instincts. When it comes to storytelling, most people are clear that the benefits that come with it. And so the benefits that I quote, 20 times more in memory retention when information is delivered as part of a story. That is because of chemicals. We release dopamine into our body at certain points of a story, and that is what enables us to enhance our memory retention. And so once we know that and we can understand what parts of a story do that, we can look to design stories that have that, so that our campaigns and our products have more than 20 times retention. A great example is something that we're all victim to, is that cliffhanger that comes at the end of a Netflix episode, that rising tension. That is what causes the dopamine spike, and it's why when that sign comes up, do you want to watch one more episode? And you realize that you only sat down to watch one, and now you're on episode 5. That's very purposely designed by writers who understand the power of storytelling to do that. And that's one example of a lot that marketers, it should learn from writers, and we should learn those little rules so that we can make sure that we're utilizing them as well, because we want the same benefits that writers want. We want to engage, we want to resonate, we want to stay front of mind. We want to make people happy and build loyalty. And so there's a lot of things we can learn and the more that we understand how we think, the better. I always think marketing is basically the understanding of how we think, feel, and behave, and then using that information. And I think the more that I've learned is that so much of the way we think is based on stories and storytelling.
So I have a question for you that's a bit challenging because it's triggered from it comes from a conversation I had recently with Hattie. Maybe you know her, Hattie, the PMM.
Yes.
Yeah,
I met her just recently in London.
Okay, nice. So Hattie we started the conversation, and the first thing she told me was frameworks are bullshit. This is how she started. So I just want to put this out there and hear what you think, because I'll share my view. I think it can be true for some frameworks. I've seen that as product marketers, we're tempted to copy paste a lot of things because we think it's just how it works. If it worked before, it will work again. But with storytelling, I think it does make sense. Like what you were saying about, we do tell stories naturally, and the frameworks you share in your book, I could see them work out pretty well in a company or in how I approach a blog or a launch campaign, right? But I want to hear from you. Like, is that something you would counter argue, or what would you say to that?
No, I wouldn't counter. I would split it into one part truth, one part false.
Okay.
I think where my truth is for that is that you shouldn't live and die by them, and they shouldn't be guiding all of your decisions, and you shouldn't think that it's true in every case. All of these things, they're very rigid. Mm-hmm. But whereas false is that they are extremely helpful if you are in a status of inaction. So if you don't, like, a positioning canvas as a framework is extremely good in reframing your mind to change your perspective of what your product can be. You might not be able to gain an understanding of how best to position your product without a positioning framework. You could do it, and people were doing positioning before positioning frameworks existed. So it proves that you didn't need them. People just instinctively knew we're doing positioning before positioning was a thing. But does that mean that thousands of people don't benefit from actually having a positioning framework to help guide them to find it a lot easier and cheaper and more reliably than having it without it? I still find the benefit, and that's my approach to them when I use them, is that it helps me to change my perspective and to see something I might not be able to see. And also in my workshops, I see how many people I've taught who couldn't understand something, and then when they saw the framework, they just
They
got
got
it.
it. Yeah.
And maybe that's the type of person as well. But I do also put that with a pinch of salt. Whenever I deliver my frameworks and I show the thousands of different storytelling frameworks, I say you can almost throw these away. Like use them as inspiration, but do not let them restrict your freedom in writing, and they're just to get you to the next stage, really.
Okay. Thanks for answering. I
Yeah.
just, I know this wasn't in the questions I shared with you, but I just wanted to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
And back to frameworks and stories. Um, I think now with actually the rise of these frameworks and the fact that there's more tools and courses around becoming better storytellers, there's too many stories out there, right? And there's this
Mhm.
challenge of information overload, which we talked about as well last week. Um, how can product marketers avoid falling in that trap? How can we stand out with our stories? There must be some tricks that you can share with us.
Yeah, so this concept of information overload, that's something I became really interested in last year. And I think because I started working a lot more in this B2B tech space, and this was the big change for me. Coming from B2C, especially the sports industry, you've got half a dozen major brands, and so it becomes very easy as a product marketer to understand who are the other voices that you're competing against, and how you can be different. But how do you do that as a smaller MarTech brand who has thousands of competitors around the world? Um, it becomes very difficult, and then you start to realize you might start one very similar. That's why positioning is so important, to try and find something that you can say that other people can't, but also the time to do it. And this is what I talk a lot about, is that our it's not that our attention span is going down, but our tolerance for bullshit and fluffiness has definitely reduced. We want concrete information quickly, because if you hear 100 people tell you that they are the game changer, how many times can you hear that before the next person who says it, you're like, I don't believe you, I don't trust you. This also goes in hand with how we're approaching content. So TikTok, the most used social media channel in the world, and I think a lot of people don't realize that the average watch time of a TikTok video is 3.3 seconds. And so that's a really short amount of time to send a message, influence, educate, inform, inspire, whatever it is you want to do. And I think this is where the challenge for product marketers is to now tell our story quickly. And usually the best way to talk about your proposition quickly is actually not to focus too much on your product, because a lot of our products are very technical. So I think that's the challenge, and also the opportunity is that storytelling can help you talk about what value your product creates very quickly. And I think that's why it's going to be so important, even more so going forward, because it's the vehicle that can help brands give much more deliverable, quick, impactful messages. And we are going into an age where everyone is demanding that, because very rarely are we going to be able to get people to spend 5 minutes on a landing page, read 100 pages of a white paper, sit for 1 minute of a commercial. Everything's quicker, and I think we have to change our messaging to meet that demand.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's more demand, but there's also more tools to help us do different things and test different things. And you know where I'm getting to? I'm getting to the buzzwords of artificial intelligence and all these tools that help us do things faster and more efficiently as well. And when we talked about this last week, you mentioned that AI can be used as a torch, not a tool. And I thought that was a very interesting approach. So I'd love for you to expand on that a bit more.
Yeah, it's something that I had to think a lot about last year, because a lot of our clients are need to be persuaded a little bit about how to approach AI, and that's why they come to us. And I realized that the way of selling it in as a tool actually makes them more confused, or it doesn't. It's not the best way to look at it. And the way I liked it is this idea of a torch, whereas a tool is a kind of a solution to a problem that you have. It's shiny new and they want it now. Where I like this idea of a torch as something that reveals something to you that was already there, but now you can see it. It allows you to see things that you couldn't see before. And the good thing about a torch is that it's in your hands. You're controlling it, and you have the power to use it. It's not that it's replacing you. It's amplifying you. And I think if you look at the tools that are becoming the most successful and the ones that are gaining the most pace, it's those ones that are the best at that. And I think that's why I encourage people to their approach to it. And when I work with our clients of helping them to set up their tech stack, and also how I am now starting to use AI as a product marketer, and how I think product marketers should approach AI. It was in that philosophy, and I think that's a really nice way to see it as something that's just going to enable you to do so much than you could before. And it's an important fact that you need to. I've been doing marketing for 20 years, and marketing has got more difficult every single year. Customers have got more diverse, budgets have got smaller, competition has got bigger. Everyone is doing 10 more roles than they did before. They might be managing sales enablement and competitive intelligence. And like I say, how can one or a small team manage to keep a good understanding of 100 different competitors? It's very difficult, but with AI, easy. And so this is where product marketers should be praying that AI is coming, because we need it. We need the help to be able to meet how difficult the job has become. And that's why I see it as it can be a really positive thing, but not as a tool that you install and you place and is then just running in the background, but as something that you and your team have a very clear understanding of how you're using it and how you're letting it, enabling you to do more.
I think it's a bit like what you were saying about the frameworks, right? Like
Exactly.
It's not about letting them take ownership of what you do, but you use them in a way, like in a smart way, to help you do what you're already doing faster, and build processes around your team or your current tasks or initiatives. That's at least how I see it, and it's a bit comforting to hear that you also see it that way. And speaking of AI and the role it plays with product marketers, I have a question for you, and I'm not expecting you to predict the future, but I'm curious to hear about your thoughts when it comes to what the future holds for product marketers. What do you think is waiting for us, and how can we be prepared?
I think I would love to see a situation where product marketers are moving higher up within marketing and on board level and C level. And I think that's a realistic because so many, for the reasons we've just talked about, information overload and being concrete, so many brands are and products are becoming merged. A lot of brands are just leading with their product. And I think that creates an opportunity for if your product is the focal point of your entire business, then product marketing should be involved much more in the long-term strategy of the business. So I think that's a great opportunity for product marketing to move itself up out of, I think, what a lot of people think is kind of this middleman, this stepchild in the business that sometimes we're in marketing and sometimes we're in product and sometimes we're small and sometimes we're big and fighting for our own existence. I think that there will be an opportunity for product marketing's role in the company to be a lot clearer. And AI has a part to play in that, because I think so much of our role gets taken up by processes. There's a lot of processes within the product marketing role. And if AI can take all of those processes away, then what does that leave? For me, it's strategy and storytelling, two of the things that we can spend more time on. And I think that's what we should try and own within a company. So I think that's really exciting. And those are the three skills: AI, storytelling, and business strategy. I think those are three great skills for product marketers to learn that are going to help you to not just for your own benefit, personal development, but I think that's what your company needs from you. A lot of companies fail because the product marketing's voices get washed out, and if you're able to elevate those voices, I think it's very good for the company. And I think we've seen evidence that the companies that product marketing is the voice of the customer, and the more that you can have that voice of the customer represented strategically, then I think that's where really great companies scale.
It's very exciting times to become a product marketer, and to anyone listening who is exploring the field, I'm sure you're hopefully getting as excited as I am. But one thing I want to say to our listeners is, if you're looking to learn more about storytelling, and I'm saying this because I actually started reading it, I would recommend you read The Story Engine, Elliott's book about the science of storytelling. And I'm sure Elliot will tell us more as we wrap up. I do have one final question for you, Elliot, and then you can tell us also more about the book. But my final question to you is, what's the one tip that you would want product marketers to take away from this episode, from your experience? What would you share with our listeners?
Yeah, I think one of the key things that I've learned is just adapting your messaging and hyper personalization in terms of how you approach what you say. So many companies I've been visiting, either as a consultant or the companies that I've worked in, it's incredible how many say the same thing to everyone, to different personas, to different industries. And we're in an age now where it's very easy to adapt our messaging. And I think that's the key thing, is that use your knowledge. That it's our responsibility as product marketers to understand the audience, and just making sure that that's not just existing as a persona on a template, but actually is evident in all of your messaging, that you can dynamically change it to make sure that you're speaking to the audience. That's the key of storytelling, is that it only resonates if it speaks to us emotionally, and everyone's emotions are different. Secondly, the thing I would say is start learning to train your own GPTs or your AI agents, because the more that you get comfortable with having a AI agent as your own marketing assistant, then easier it's going to be to adapt that messaging. Because once you've taught it your positioning, your messaging, your personas, it can do a fantastic job of being able to do that for you. So make sure you understand your audience, and then use the tools that are available to make that possible.
Nice. I'm definitely taking that tip with me as well.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about the book? Although I feel like I've already talked about it so much.
No, well, first of all, a book is a very kind description of it. It's definitely like a short ebook that I wrote while on my second paternity leave to stay sane. The main reason I wrote it is that I knew all of the information I'd learned about storytelling would fall out of my brain if I didn't write it down. But yeah, more than happy to share it with all of your audience for free. Just add me on LinkedIn, shoot me a message, and I can send it to you as a PDF. And I encourage everyone to learn a little bit more about storytelling. And if you need help doing that, then you can always find me on LinkedIn and reach out to me.
As I did, and I'm very happy I did. Thank you so much, Elliot. I'll share the links in the resources, of course. And thank you so much for your time. It was great talking to you.
Thank you so much.